February the 27th, 2023, approximately 3:45 p.m. And my name is Cheyenne Johnson, councilperson. I'm serving also as vice chair, co-chair for the 2022-2023 Redistricting Committee. I hereby call it to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chairwoman, Mr. Bennett, Ms. Bennett? Here. Ms. Ogier?
Here.
Councilwoman Johnson?
Present.
Councilwoman Easter Thomas?
Present.
Ms. White?
Present. You look good right there, Shane.
Afternoon. Bustling crowd today, bustling crowd. Thank y'all for your time, and anyone who's listening, thank you all as well. We may have a short meeting today, but just to reiterate some things, if we are going with the deadline of having something to submit to the Shelby County Election Commission by the end of April, their wanted date is April 14th, but we know legally it can be a tad bit after, before May. So with that in mind, if we have something to submit to full council, hopefully before March 21st, that still gives us a pressured but allowable timeline to do that in. So just to keep that on our minds, we are on a condensed time schedule, but here we are still doing the work, so thank you all. Last week, our subcommittees met. I do want to say that they initially planned, and we talked this over through our last committee meeting, to meet virtually by Zoom. It was said that legally that is unauthorized. I will be asking in full council about other city entities, boards, and those that are made up through city legislation. Why are they allowed to meet via Zoom? So that's a question that I have if folks are listening today, and also on March 7th at full council meeting. I just want to put that out there. But MAPS were able to meet in person at City Hall. And Ms. Bennett, you can go, but I was just gonna ask for a report back.
I just wanted to reiterate your statement about the Zoom meetings. I was unable to attend a meeting because I was physically not able due to some disabilities. And I did emphasize the point that it would be helpful if some of the meetings are via Zoom, if we're truly wanting to make sure that everyone who wants to be engaged can be engaged. So if that would help with the question about other entities being allowed to have electronic meetings, I am a person on this committee who has physical disabilities that sometimes do not allow me to physically be present. And I've been present since the first meeting.
And I thank you for that. I know the different difficulties that you and others are having. So we want to make sure, especially with these back-to-back meetings, that we have that option, or at least get a full, clear legal answer. I'm with you on that. So for mapping, well, for communication subcommittee, no one here. Well, you weren't, Ms. Bennett, you were, but you weren't able to attend the meeting. You were, okay, on the mapping. Okay. So no members from the communication subcommittee are here. She reported, okay, she reported last time, but they're not here today. So anyone from the mapping subcommittee, if we have a report from last week's meeting.
So we met last week, we agreed to meet.
You have the mic on, the wireless, and yeah. Okay. No, you.
We met last week and we agreed to meet every Thursday at 5 p.m. We're going to announce the place. And we wanted to make sure that we got Mr. Backus the information so that we could give out the 48-hour notice. I did want to find out where those notices are located because at our meeting we had a community member to come in and question the notification given. So I wanted to be able to know exactly where that's posted to make sure that that people have access to it and that that I'm able to respond when questioned about where it's posted. And I'll get with you about that, Mr. Backus, if you don't know it right, like off the top of your head right now. One thing that we wanted to get permission for and we discussed was the opportunity for community members to submit maps. And since we're already under a very tight time crunch, what we explored was the possibility of a press release and also if the council could set up an actual email address to be included in that press release so that those maps can be submitted to one email and mapping can tell us what format those maps need to be submitted so that the mapping committee subcommittee may review those as a part of any of the recommendations that comes out of the mapping subcommittee. We came up with a deadline of March 17th for community maps, which would mean we would need to get an email address set up pretty quickly and a press release sent out, I would say, probably by Thursday or Friday of this week, if not sooner. I don't know how long it takes to set up an email address here. Okay. And we wanted to get like full permission. This was basically a recommendation. We did not make any final decision on it, but that was a recommendation so that the community could have input in the mapping process as well.
Chair. Yeah. What was the deadline you gave us previously? Said we'll try to get everything in by what date? March the
To council or to the election commission?
election commission.
The election commission sent an email saying preferably April 14th. Alan told us in our actual full council meeting that it needed to be in April.
By April 1st, you gonna say?
He didn't say, but remember that's when we initially had the deadline of April 30th on the resolution.
I thought I saw an earlier date than that.
You saw April 14th date on the letter for preferred, but that's not required. It just has to be in the month of April.
Okay. So I was trying to back up and say, let's make sure we have enough time for Alan Wade to review those maps. So does that fall in enough time frame for us?
I think it's enough time for him. I guess if it's not, he'll let us know.
I guess we need to find out how much time he thinks he's gonna need, depending on, I guess, how many maps we may submit.
Maybe as we get the maps and vote on them in the committee, send them to him to review in real time instead of waiting to the end and giving them all of them. If we have, depending on how many we have.
Right. I don't know. I mean,
Any
worked
thought?
with Alan in the past real time. I don't see that happening. He always, we need at least a lot of week, I think, just for him to get the maps
I think a week is fair.
and to review them. So look at that and see if that time frame still works for you.
We took into consideration the other deadlines that were given previously when we came up with the March 17th one. And that would allow us time to actually look at them as well, to see and also consider those in our meetings, the ones that are submitted. We discussed, how many there would be, but there was just really no way for us to determine how many possible maps would be submitted by the community. Dr. Harris mentioned when he did this for the county, he couldn't really recall how many community maps were submitted. So we don't have a clue if it'll be none or 10 or 20 or how many.
Right.
And the other thing, Chair, to keep in mind is we have to have 3 readings on it. So make sure if the deadline is going to be the end of March, when the last meeting, so we can backtrack. So it would have to begin, I guess, in April, the end of April, March.
March. So March, if March 21st, which is our second March council meeting, if we're able to vote same night minutes on committee that day for first reading, then that will keep us in a timely manner.
What date
March 21st, so the second March reading.
for the second reading?
The second March meeting for the first reading.
That
Then
gives-
second
take
reading
us-
would be the first April meeting. And then the third reading would be the second April
Okay,
meeting.
that's fine if we can make sure that's acceptable with the election. Thank you.
Thank you. And in between that time, since we can't make changes to anything on second reading, that still gives Alan plenty of time beyond that 1 week that we were thinking about.
That's true.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Give him a couple weeks, actually. Attorney White, did you have anything else to point out? Thank you for providing the minutes as well.
That's all that we have, unless Mr. Ogier or Ms. Bennett has anything else to add.
No? Okay. Well, it seems like you all were able to get a lot done. Would it be fair to ask that we go ahead and vote on getting an email and sending a press release this week that is what we're going to do for the community to be able to submit maps? All right.
Would you like me to make a motion? Yeah. I motion that the council creates an email address for community members to submit maps, and that we do a press release for a deadline of March 17th.
All right. First, motion made by Attorney White to get an email address and submit a press release, seconded by Ms. Lisa Bennett. All those in favor? You need to.
Make that clear. Councilwoman Johnson was saying that I said by the deadline to have those maps submitted would be March 17th.
March
by
17th.
community members.
Yep. Right. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. So we will work with council staff on getting that email address. Are there any preferences did y'all think about what y'all wanted the email address to say? No?
No.
Okay.
We just wanted everything to be in a set place. Now, in terms of the press release, we will need to defer to mapping to find out what would be the best format for us to state that those maps be submitted in.
Best file format?
You said what kind of format?
You talking about file format?
Right, correct, yes.
Okay. Liza?
I'll make a quick point that Andy mentioned. We create a City of Memphis email. Only staff will be able to access it. Then we could forward it to the appropriate parties. But that would be the only limitation. So it wouldn't automatically go to the inboxes or be able to be reviewed by those committees.
Thank you for that. You heard that? Yeah. Okay. I think that'll still be good enough as well. Yeah. But file format, did you have any on that? Okay.
The file format could be either a PDF or any of the image file formats. Because we can work with any of that.
Okay. It makes it more accessible. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I observed that meeting last week, but the question is raised, will it be required to have any documentation to support the maps? For instance, what was the total number of population for each one of the districts on that map? What type of documentation would you want to come with the map to support it?
Did you all have a chance to discuss that? Or do you have suggestions on what documentation should come?
That's not a question for mapping. That's a question for the mapping subcommittee, because they'll need to decide whether or not they want any documentation to support it and what they would need in their deliberations. Basically what mapping will do is we'll take the image that they provide us and provide a map with our data based on what we've already provided you, So if the community members provide no data at all, we'll still be able to work with their, whatever their mapping recommendations are.
I think Dr. Harris had mentioned that the maps just needed to meet the criteria for like the same criteria we have for like the number of people in each district, but he didn't mention anything about justification. But I feel like that would probably be helpful if these are like public maps and we're justifying why the boundaries are being shifted. So I think we should probably include that. I don't know what everyone else's thoughts are. Beyond just the criteria of meeting the equal distribution of population.
I don't think the public should have to have any more justification than what City Council has historically done. So whatever criteria have historically been a part of this process, I don't think the general public should have to do more. As much as or the same, yes, but not more. So whatever those particular criteria are, if they could be included as part of the press release, I think that would be helpful.
And mapping subcommittee, when you all discussed the press release, who were you looking at to craft it? Were you wanting to do it in subcommittee? Were you needing assistance of staff? What were y'all discussing?
We were, and I didn't know how you all did that from within, if you all had a communications person who actually drafted press releases within the council, or how that worked.
We need one.
we were hoping to use staff for it. I'm more than happy to, assist with that.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if you all draft, that's a good idea. If you all draft a press release, send that to communications, and then we can we send it by email to everyone for review?
Yes.
Okay. And then we'll send it to everyone for review. And then be able to put that out.
I guess my only side note would be that we would need to move pretty swiftly since we're asking for a March 17th deadline.
Yeah, so since it's already on record that we are making an email address and a press release, the public would just be awaiting the press release. So if you can send that, and then we can ask all community members, which also includes council members as well. We can go ahead and get the okay on that, and then just send it out by Thursday. You said Thursday or Friday?
I think that's reasonable.
Okay. With a March 17th deadline. Okay. So you are already laid it out in the minutes what the press release needs to say anyway.
Somewhat, yeah.
Okay. Anything else from mapping subcommittee? Questions, needs, comments?
We just want to make sure that, for our purposes, that we can go ahead and just mark every Thursday at 5. And I think we wanted to meet somewhere differently, but I don't think we have a new location yet. So I guess we'll let you all know that no later than tomorrow, so that we can give the 24 hours notice for the Thursday meeting.
Okay.
48 hours notice for the Thursday meeting.
Wow. It's open. You're talking about for streaming.
Unless you have streaming capabilities.
Does anyone have streaming capabilities if you all were to meet at a different location?
Yeah, I can stream it on Zoom wherever we're meeting, just via my laptop. I don't think that would be an issue, and we can just provide the Zoom link to you, or you can provide one to us. Or...
No, not them meeting on Zoom.
But,
the stream link is through Zoom.
Or YouTube or whatever. It doesn't matter, whatever the streaming service is.
I'm not understanding what he's talking about.
So if you're looking at a Facebook Live of a live meeting, like if Mr. Belinky was streaming, and you put out that link, would that not be a streaming link also?
Isn't that what we did when we had the bad weather earlier this year, when we met on?
Yeah, we met on Zoom. But if you all have a different location, I would say just discuss that with Mr. Backus, and get that figured out. Yeah. I wouldn't think it was a problem, but I'm also not the attorney up here. So I don't want to make attorney decisions. But I will say that is a question for other city entities that do the same thing or that don't stream at all. So yeah, okay. But having that capability is a good thing to know. So every Thursday at 5, so this Thursday at 5, the mapping subcommittee will meet again. And we'll also be asking folks from the communication subcommittee when the next time they're meeting as well, especially since we're planning to put out their press release at the end of the week. And again, y'all definitely discussed a lot. Thank you for the minutes. That surely helps. All right. So moving on to discussion items. Update on notification and communications. There were a lot of committee members who were not able to make it today for other reasons, but hopefully we can just continue just to have folks who are here engaged like y'all already are, so we can continue on this work. Towards the end of the meeting, we'll set more meetings, but we definitely want to make sure that we'll question for the mapping subcommittee. So if you all are meeting at 5, would a Thursday meeting for the full redistricting committee at 3:30 impede upon that? If you all were to, so if we have a meeting Thursday, we're not, but if we have a meeting Thursday and then you all were to meet right after, is that okay for the sake of time as we're choosing more redistricting committee meetings?
I think for now it's fine. We can leave it. If we have to change it, we will.
Okay.
Right now, we're just kind of trying to make sure that we meet as much as possible due to the limited time available for us to actually do mapping.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that it's something that's going to require more than like an hour meeting or even probably sometimes more than a 2-hour meeting. And we're just trying to be able to meet as often as possible.
Okay. I also would like to, and Coach, you can chime in. I also would like to see the mapping subcommittee. I'm glad that you all that we voted on to accept community maps. But also if you can discuss this Thursday when y'all meet about not thinking about the community map submissions, but how are we going to get the maps done? If that can be decided upon this Thursday, I think it's a good deadline for that. So what entity who has GIS capabilities, are we just looking at the one provided by City Mapping that was given to Attorney Wade? Are we doing another entity? If y'all are able to discuss that and get a clear path that we can discuss as a full committee, that'd be really helpful moving forward into March. Yeah, go ahead. The mic, yep.
This coming Thursday, the mapping committee will meet. Do you know where?
That's what I just said. We don't know where yet. It may end up here as just a default, being that we're so close to that 48-hour notice.
And that's from 6 to 8?
I had 5 and then I had 6 to 8. Mr. OJ, do you remember which one it is? Because for some reason I have 5 earlier in my notes and then
I'm sure staff hopes it's
later
fine.
I have 6 to 8.
I just had put 6 to 8 in the notes.
Okay.
I don't remember all the way back from last Thursday, but that's what I wrote down. I don't know.
6 to, that's kind of late, is it? Or it's 5 to 7 or?
Yeah, we can do 5 to 7, I believe. I believe that'll be fine.
For this coming Thursday, for
Yes,
sure.
for this coming Thursday, and it may change. And we probably will have to figure out another location simply because Dr. Harris mentioned that he anticipates that at least a couple of our meetings will require longer than 2 hours.
To review anything that's submitted.
Maps, lay them out.
Yeah.
Well, for us to even just go through and figure out exactly what we'll be submitting, after we had our initial meeting, it's very intensive what we need to do, and it's going to require a lot of time on our behalf. And so we just have to make sure that we get each other's schedules coordinated just for this limited time to make sure that we're able to get it done.
Yeah.
Other thing, would it be possible to get some staff assistance during these subcommittees?
I think staff was
Didn't have any of these last couple of meetings.
okay.
Yeah.
Liza, Ms. Carton and Mr. Backus will discuss that. Right, okay.
Thank you.
Even if it shifts, you stay an hour, you stay an hour. Whatever is helpful for y'all to help out I appreciate y'all. Okay. Thank you for the suggestion, Councilwoman. All right. Any other thoughts, comments, needs, concerns on there? Okay. Moving to committee discussion items, looking at mapping tools and scenario planning. Are these different from what we received last week? This isn't something new that you gave us, correct?
No, it's census data.
That's a very good question. Is this the stuff that I sent last week?
Data. Census data 2010, 2020.
I'm just asking because it was new on
This
the
was in
list.
response to y'all's request because you wanted to compare the 2010 census to the 2020 census.
Okay.
So the census or the voting precincts are the 2022 voting precincts, and I wanted to give you the census numbers for those voting precincts so that you guys could start looking at how those precincts have changed in population.
And so, yeah, so we did receive that last meeting. This is just an extra set up here. Okay, making sure. So question that I think was answered last time, but I've been thinking about it and I want to ask again. For the variations within each district, do you, the city mapping, take that into consideration when doing it just basic numerically based off census data? Do you take into consideration that 5% above or below population variation that was
No, ma'am.
discussed? Okay. So
what I looked at was just the raw data. If it said there were 500 total people in that voting precinct, then that was the number I used.
So it was, from the maps you submitted to Attorney Wade, was it districts that varied vastly in population number? Or were they in similar with population count?
Ultimately, my goal was to get everybody, or all 7 city council districts as close to even as possible, which is not, you're not able to get 100% equal across it just because of we're using entire voting precincts. I was able to get in my recommendation to Alan Wade, I believe the number was 3,600 difference between the largest and smallest districts, which would definitely fall within that 5% that he mentioned.
Thank you. I was wondering about that because I didn't have that in my notes from if that's what city mapping did as well with that. But if you didn't intend to and it still ended up that way, that's a good thing to know too.
Like I said, we look purely at the numbers, what the numbers that were reported within the 2020 census, and added them all up for each of the voting precincts and made sure that everything was as close as balanced as I could get it.
Thank you. And everyone here is on mapping. I'll speak this out loud and then I'll make sure that communication subcommittees get it as well. What I'm hoping for with their next meeting is that they can identify a way physically for if there is going to be any physical community outreach, how, when, and where that is going to happen with the timelines that we've set up. And so I'll make sure they get this in the wrap up meeting minutes as well. But to be able to identify a place where if we're going to have community maps or whatever, the maps that were submitted or the maps that we're looking at being printed out big where folks can look at them, take questions, concerns, comments in real time, and be able to report that back and have that be within the timeline of March 21st. And also in the timeline between first and second reading as well. I think we should also be able to do that then. And that'll also give time for Attorney Wade to review them as well. So hoping that the communication subcommittee is able to narrow down a time to engage with the public in a physical way. But also with mapping, y'all coming back with that determination on how it's gonna be done. And I think we'll have more to add to the discussion on the next redistricting committee. Yes, ma'am.
Chair, I recommend that we send a memo to Alan Wade telling him the dates we anticipate needing his assistance so he can make sure his calendar is free.
That can be done.
And that way, he'll know what's coming. 1 to maybe 5 maps, but make sure he's aware of it. So, you don't give it to him the day before. And he said, nobody told me. So this way, he would have sufficient notice to anticipate those maps.
When we get the maps, when we get any maps submitted or voted on. That's what
Right.
you're referring to?
Right.
Okay.
And let him know what time frame, what the dates.
Time we need it.
He should be available to review those maps for us, right? Or I guess you may ask him, does he want them as they become available, or does he want them all at one time? But this is the deadline we definitely need for you to be finished reviewing these maps.
And you're saying that as a memo from the committee or a memo from myself and you as the, okay.
Committee,
We can do that.
everybody, I don't want to hand him maps and he'll say, my work schedule doesn't permit this. A lot of us, and if he can't do it, give us enough time to find someone else who's able to do it.
I agree. All right, so we'll get that memo drafted and we'll be able to share that with all community members when we send it. All right. I think that we covered a lot of ground last week with city mapping as we were going through the different materials and seeing how it would impact our criteria and how we're looking at the future maps, whatever we get. As going forward, I think that we are really listening for the feedback of the subcommittees. You all are really doing a bulk of the work right now for us to come back and review. So we can schedule our next meetings after the mapping subcommittee and after we give time for the community subcommittee this week. And I won't put anything on staff before council next Tuesday. I won't do that to y'all. If you are able to, and Ms. Cry, when is the Blight Committee finished? Are they done tomorrow?
Tomorrow's the last scheduled
Okay. Just want to make sure we're not, we want everybody to get their time that they need in the community room. Okay. So we will look at 2 additional dates. What about this? Is this Thursday too soon? Well, we gotta wait on them, so never mind. Okay. We'll send out some dates by email. I'll get with Vice Chair and I'll get with Mr. Backus and Ms. Carton just to make sure we aren't impeding on anybody else. And we'll send out dates for redistricting committee via email. And we want to make sure that we get the mapping subcommittee time to meet too. And it's time to get our council docs together for Tuesday. All right, I told you I was going to be a little short today, right? Are there any questions for anyone? City mapping, us, Vice Chair. You had your hand up. Mike.
I was wondering if I could read a statement, but not as city mapping, but as a resident of the city of Memphis.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good evening. I'm making this statement not as a representative of City of Mapping or City Mapping, but as a private citizen residing within the City of Memphis. This statement does not reflect the opinions of Engineering Division, Mapping, or City Administration. I'd like to thank Council for bringing the council redistricting process into the light, but for too long, across our country, this process of setting up political boundaries has been closed off to the public. Therefore, I applaud your decision to have the citizens of Memphis involved in this process. Yet I'm shocked and dismayed that it appears you are willing to let the final part of this process remain cloaked in darkness. You have asked this committee to provide map recommendations, but failed to provide them with all the rules that are needed to complete this task. This error is not entirely council's fault. During the February 7th meeting, Attorney Wade was asked to explain the consent decree that governs the legal requirements of this map. However, Mr. Wade explained that he was unwilling to educate the public on how to sue the City of Memphis. While this appears sound logic, in my opinion, it is the opposite. If Mr. Wade educates the committee and the public as to the rules set forth in the consent decree, this committee will have the framework needed to create the map's recommendations as directed by the council resolution. It is important to have the public informed to this framework so that they will be able to provide checks and balances on this committee's process. Without public understanding of this framework, including the legal rules which must be followed, this process will remain cloaked in darkness. Likewise, since the general public will know the framework and the rules this committee are following, they will be able to see the deliberations and decisions being made, and they will understand why the final map looks the way it does. As such, with this added transparency, the City of Memphis will be less likely to be sued. If the committee moves forward with this final process being cloaked in darkness from the public, the odds, in my opinion, that this committee and the City of Memphis will get sued greatly increases. The public follows all of the work that this committee, but if changes are made to this map after this committee makes its recommendations, they will be completely shrouded in darkness with no explanation to the public. Therefore, as a resident of the City of Memphis, I strongly suggest that Mr. Wade explain the consent decree in the committee meeting. Then, if the committee recommends a map that somehow violates the consent decree, he should state during the committee meeting that it violates this consent decree and explain how it violates this consent decree so that the committee can make corrections to this map in full view of the public. In closing, if the council chooses to continue with its current course, it might as well dismiss this committee, as their recommendation will have no matter on the final outcome of this map, as Mr. Wade can make any changes that he wants and vaguely attribute it to meeting the consent decree, and the committee will have no choice but to blindly accept his conclusion. Personally, I find this option of a one unelected person deciding the outcome of the city council districts appalling and disturbing after all of the diligent work and time that members of this committee have already put forth in this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blankenbeckler. Blankenbeckler. I think names are important. Blankenbeckler. Thank you. Thank you for that. And just as a quick thought response, definitely when we brought up consent decree, I think that is on everyone's mind, is that it's always a hot term that's thrown around in city council of who knows it, who doesn't know it, and how does it apply to anything. So I think that it is important to know that, and I think that we can also add that in our memo, Vice Chair, that we send to ask for availability to review the maps, that is also done in tandem with the definition and explanation of the consent decree. Thank you for your view as a resident. Thank you. Is there any other business for this committee? We're gonna set the next meeting date by email and then put it out. Yeah, I want to make sure I get with y'all to make sure it's not messing up anything else. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Lisa Bennett.
I did get to watch the last council executive committee meeting, and I did observe that Councilman Morgan brought up the supposed situation with the violation of Sunshine Law, and I just want to know that we've had that discussion, we've had our agreements, that's not coming forth again in this particular committee. I think if I remember correctly, it was said that it would be brought before the next executive council meeting, but I just want to be sure. I actually wanted to ask Councilman Morgan about that, but he's not here, that is not coming forth in this committee, full committee again.
You're correct. It's not going to be on our agenda moving forward. We got other pertinent stuff, as I'm sure you agree. Yeah. Mr. Belinkie, we will accept your public comment. If you can go to a mic, a wireless mic, and speak into it and give your name and address for the record.
My name is Charles Belinkie. My address is 995 Eccles. I just have a couple of requests. The first is that in drawing the line between District 8 and District 9, that you not split Sherwood Forest. Right now it goes through Robin Hood, but move that line possibly further west to Prescott. The other comment I have is that Sherwood Forest has a lot in common with Normal Station, and the current lines put them in two different districts. Thank you for your attention.
Hold on, don't turn the mic off. Can you explain what you mean? I know these are neighborhoods, but why are you saying that this is important, that the line doesn't go through Sherwood Forest, you said, with super districts? Are you thinking about precincts? Are you thinking about neighborhoods and communities? Where are you coming from with your comments?
I'm thinking about neighborhoods and communities. Sherwood Forest naturally changes or ends at Prescott. West of there is a different neighborhood than the area between Getwell and Prescott. And also, Normal Station is very university-oriented, and I think that that Sherwood Forest has the potential to be more university-oriented. So that's the reason for my concerns.
Are you a resident of one of these three neighborhoods, Normal Station,
Yes,
Sherwood?
yes, 995 Eccles Street is one block west of the tentative line of Robin Hood that divides Sherwood Forest.
Okay. And what current super district are you in now?
I'm not sure. I don't know which is the current super district
Well,
map.
before the change maps in the last District 4 election, whose district were you in?
Oh, I'm in District 4, and I'm in Super District 8. And the proposed change moves the line west, but not, if it was 2 blocks further west, it would be better for me. Thank you.
You're not trying to run for office, are you? You gonna make a declaration today?
No.
Okay. Wanted to ask about that.
Keep in mind, those maps that you have, they have not been changed. He said changed.
What do you mean?
He mentioned that the maps were changed to include something, but what he's looking at is 2022 maps.
Okay. Yeah, and the map you're looking at is the current one that was just redone by Attorney Wade for the special election.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Belinkie. Any other business in this committee? I look forward to tuning in with the mapping subcommittee, seeing y'all, and looking forward to our next meeting. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.